Okay, so I'm not sure how hearable I actually am because I don't really have like a good place to record, but I want to try to make some of the part 2 for the whole autism, ASD, autism, PDs, schizophrenia, and BPD video. The point that I'm getting at, or plan to get to eventually one day, is that while I got labeled with pretty much everything in the DSM, and the autism label is a coincidence because, like I said, I got labeled with everything, so of course that's going to be one of them. The more research I've done, the more I've realized that honestly, my whole family is quote-unquote autistic, and that's kind of the funny thing. It kind of reminds me of this one point in my situation where this counselor was like, well, if your mom is saying you're schizophrenic, then she's schizophrenic too because it's genetic. But honestly, the autism thing is the same way. And then as a side note, I haven't mentioned this since like the part 6 channel. I don't know if anybody here is like from the evidence channels. I doubt it. I definitely doubt that anybody's still here from the part 1 channel except like one person. But anywho, the first time I tried to escape my situation and the Let Me Help You Lunatics got me locked up, there was this whole situation with this specific hospital because, of course, when you first get arrested, you commonly are taken to like jail or the ER first, and then you get sent to whatever facility or residential facility. And so the hospital that I was taken to before I was sent off was the same one that had already been saying things about the Munchausen situation, but of course, cash for kid system staff get paid to help abuse you. So while they would come to me about stuff, they still didn't care. And the funny thing is, they didn't agree that I was autistic, and they didn't agree with any of the other labels either, which was really funny because I remember before my mom got me put in the Jim Crow placement, she went there to get the autism label put back on paper because she was told that she needed like new paperwork, and she had went to some clinic thing there that would do it. But wait a minute, but yet this same hospital where my mom had got it put back on paper had said that they didn't even know they had autism clinic, and they were like, well, did a doctor ever really say that you were autistic? And I was just thinking, well, I mean, this is where she got it put back on paper, so how are you going to ask me that? And I don't even really know why they ask questions like that when I'm pretty sure all that stuff is in files or medical records anyway. But yeah, so that happened, and they were talking about how they didn't agree with any of the labels or the autism, but then the places they sent me off to, it got put back on paper a third time. Not that anything ever really gets taken off because they say that they don't agree with stuff and they say a whole bunch of bull crap, but due to the fact that they get paid to help your abusers and they even will abuse you themselves, they don't actually do anything to stop the situation. Although this is the same hospital that told me that there had been notes in the system about my abuse situation since apparently North Carolina, which is very interesting, but it's all weird. So they sent me off to this place, and then it got put back on paper a third time, quote unquote. And with that specific psychiatrist or whatever he was like, part of the reason that I became a psychiatrist, I think he was a psychiatrist, he was something like that, was because I noticed that black people are always labeled off as crazy and schizophrenic. And so, what did he say? Oh yeah, he told me this whole story about how he had a friend in college or in university who got depressed because he wanted to go back home to his family because they were rich. But due to the fact that he was quote-unquote black, nobody believed he was rich, or at least the doctors didn't. So they said that he was schizophrenic, and then they wouldn't even tell his family where he was. They wouldn't let him go home. They wouldn't even let him go back to school because they believed that he was delusional and that he was just having a schizophrenic delusion that he was rich while being dark-skinned. And so the psychiatrist told me that whole story, and he was like, that's why I'd rather just for you to have the autism label, because I don't want people to say that you're crazy. And anybody that's saying that you're schizophrenic or that you have psychosis or any of those other things, tell them that, I forgot what his name was, but tell them that I said that you're not crazy. But the thing is, all of that was really some bullcrap, because autism is seen no different than any other mental label. All of it is being quote-unquote bad, crazy, and retarded. So there is no difference. There is no difference with having the autism label or the Down syndrome label. Although Down syndrome is like an actual genetic condition where you actually have chromosome differences, but there's no difference between autism and sociopathy or psychosis or schizophrenia. And just like that psychiatrist said in the very beginning of my Munchausen and Cash for Kids system situation, he said that the diagnosis didn't make a difference because autism and schizophrenia is the same thing. And I mean, of course, now people with the label are talking about how it's not that I really agree with any of this label stuff, but it's like there is no difference seen between any of those things. That's why whenever an abused kid runs away, the first thing parents will do is put out a Maddie's alert or a BOLO or a silver alert, and they'll make it clear that the kid is quote-unquote autistic or supposedly autistic. Like, that's the first thing you'll see in a missing persons report. They have autism or they have high-functioning autism. And so what people think when they see that is, oh, this person's retarded, and they're so retarded that they don't even know they left the house. They don't even know that they opened the door. They don't even know that they got on a bus and went states away. They don't know that they're going by a fake name to try to get away from their abusive family because they're just so retarded and autistic. They don't know any better. And honestly, if you're in an abuse situation, not only is your label gonna not be true, but even if you did have autism or something, you don't want any label on you in an abuse situation. Not that you have control over it, because it's really hard to be abused or trafficked or going through whatever torture situation in the U.S. and not go through the Cash for Kids system. Like, you're most likely automatically going to go through the school system branch, and then that can push you off to the CPS branch or to the mental health system, because before the abusive parent does it, the school system is commonly the one that'll give out the bad boy or the bad black boy with ADHD label, or the bad dark-skinned kid with ODD or not OCD, with ODD label. Or they'll just give it to you because you're a boy in general, because they hate males, and so you'll get the bad boy with ADHD or ODD label, or something else. In fact, I remember when somebody brought it to my attention back in maybe 2021 or 2022, someone brought it to my attention that the ODD label is actually a way of calling a kid a sociopath without saying it. And of course, this goes along with ASPD. Not the whole serial killer bullcrap where there's these people like Jeffrey Dahmer that are created by the U.S. government through trauma-based mind control, and then they make movies about them to try to make them as some type of hero to get people to be like that. Which, of course, like I already said, I mean, they're created by the government anyway. And then they're told, wait a minute. Then you're told that those are quote-unquote sociopaths. Those aren't sociopaths. Those are people, those are severely demonized people under mind control to do the things that they did. And honestly, the things like what Jeffrey did, those are satanic rituals anyway. Especially the whole eating black people, hanging quote-unquote black men on a cross. Those are all demonic rituals. But like an actual sociopath, so like ASPD, not the little movie stuff and the serial killer stuff. ASPD is a trauma symptom, of course, and it's really bullcrap. It's just like a way of saying that somebody isn't doing what you want them to do. Same thing with ODD label. Someone won't do something crazy, somebody won't conform to something that's not okay, and then they'll be labeled off as ASPD. Which is the same thing that they would do for people with autism, the same thing they would do for slaves who didn't want to be slaves. Of course, the same thing they do for abused kids who don't want to be abused. All the labels are thrown on you to make you feel like you're the bad guy and everything is your fault. And even to eventually condition you into actually having some of these conditions. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, and then for homeless people, they would also be considered to have quote-unquote ASPD, which is antisocial personality disorder, because they're not fitted into societal norms. And some people have been through certain things to where they don't even want to be in society. They don't want to have anything to do with money because, of course, I mean, people have been out here since they were 7 to 16, somewhere around that age. They're foster kids that were in the other branches of the Cash for Kids system. A lot of people were even in higher level SRA sex trafficking. And after a while, they're just thrown out onto the streets. Because, of course, the quote-unquote missing people that people claim or pretend they care so much about, they're the same people out here. And another thing with the ASPD, or antisocial personality disorder, / being a sociopath or antisocial, is that it's a label you get when you have a strong sense of justice. Just like how people will get called retarded for being nice, and like how when somebody with Down syndrome or something sees somebody who looks sad and they want to give them a hug, and then they'll get in trouble and they'll be told that they're retarded and people make fun of them. Same thing with the ASPD stuff. People who are considered sociopaths, like actual, or at least the ones that would be more likely to get the label, not the people that are in these crime shows that don't actually have the label, not that. They're people with strong senses of justice who really don't want people to do things that they shouldn't do to people, pretty much, to make a long story short. I mean, of course there is like another side to this, because with all these labels, there's a spectrum to it, which is never admitted, but all these labels have a spectrum. It depends on what type of spirits you have and how high ranking they are. Of course, when you're in certain situations, you're not going to even really have symptoms of whatever you get labeled with. But yeah, so this could also go into the whole situation where in the 2010s, autism was still seen no different than being a sociopath, quote unquote, and even being a narcissist these days, because that term is more popular now. Because for one, people with the autism label wouldn't really fit into society, and then they would have like a tone of voice that doesn't really change, things like that would get them labeled off as a quote-unquote sociopath. And yeah, so there's that. In fact, this girl I know who also has the borderline symptoms, but of course will never get labeled with that, because in the Cash for Kids system, they don't do any real evaluations anyway. Their goal isn't to throw a label on you that you actually show symptoms of. And like I said before, in the early parts of your abuse, and honestly for a while, maybe even into adulthood, you're not going to have any real issues that have actually really set in. You're not going to really be set in your ways. That's why they condition you into having issues that are quote-unquote permanent. But anyway, this, I forgot something. So going back to the psychiatrist thing that said he'd rather for me to have the autism label because he doesn't want me to be another quote-unquote crazy black person, which it didn't even make sense, because, I mean, at the end of the day, depending on the situation, my mom was going to say whatever label she wanted to. So he could say autism all he wants, but my mom was only going to use the autism label in situations where she wanted to. In other situations, she may say that I have OCD. In another one, she may say I have psychosis or something, which I don't think psychosis is necessarily much of a diagnosis. It seems like something that's more temporary, that isn't supposed to last for like years or months or whatever, but she still would say whatever she wants, so I don't really know why he was telling me that. But yeah, so that was kind of funny. But I also mentioned the whole BPD thing, which honestly, you don't even want something like that put on paper in an abuse situation, or really ever. But he was like, he wouldn't even want that either for me, because he doesn't want me to be another quote-unquote crazy black person. But like I said, I mean, what he says doesn't matter, because nobody cares what he says. And the situations was going to be whatever it was going to be when my abusers wanted it to be that. So I don't really know his point. But so now I can go to the other BPD thing I was about to say with the girl. So this other girl who also has BPD type symptoms with the attachment issues and all that, she had the bipolar label, of course, because when you go into the Cash for Kids system, there's diagnoses that they're always going to give everybody who comes in. They're going to give everybody the BPD label. Not BPD, oh my gosh, bipolar. And if you're a boy, they may give you the ADHD label. They may still give it to you if you're a girl, but they're less likely to give you the bipolar label if you're a boy. So bipolar is going to be for the girls, sometimes the boys. ADHD could be for anybody, but especially for dark skin. It's something else. It's 2 labels that they always give you, but I can't remember what the other one was. I know schizophrenia is one. But if you're white, you are going to be less likely to get the schizophrenia label in the Cash for Kids system. There's something else, though. I can't even remember. It's bipolar. I don't even know. But those are some of them. Oh, yeah, autism. But, I mean, that's really popular these days. But they weren't really doing that back then that much. Well, no, because this was recent. I guess I'm thinking about it in general. But anywho, even though she shows symptoms of BPD, if anything, but there are no real evaluations done. And honestly, as much as people want to talk about somebody getting quote-unquote help, these Cash for Kids system placements, they never have psychologists. They don't have therapists. And if you do find one with a therapist, then that's rare. Because, I mean, it's really just like a torture daycare. That's all it really is. That's all any institution is, to be honest. But yeah, so they just gave her the bipolar label like they do everybody. Which is actually kind of funny. Because due to the fact that I don't think my mom used the schizophrenia label this time when I got put in this placement. When I tried to escape my situation the first time. Or at least she did, but they did keep saying to her that they really didn't agree with that. And so I guess instead, she said something about bipolar, so I think that she might have already told them that before I went in, so it was just already on there, which made the whole situation with the psychiatrist even more funny, because it's like, you're trying to push this idea that you don't want me to be the quote-unquote crazy black person, and you only want me to have the autism label, because that's what he said. He was like, I only want you to have the autism diagnosis. But I mean, the thing is, my abusers are going to do whatever they want to do, so I really just don't get the point of you even saying any of that, because you're not going to do anything to really make sure that happens. And it doesn't make a difference because the autism label is still seen as being crazy, so I don't really get the point. But yeah, so this girl, she told me about how, like, when she was younger, she used to have to wear a helmet because whenever she would get mad, she would start banging her head on the sidewalk. She would hit herself in the face when she got mad, and she made, like, a lot of noises and stuff. But the thing is, of course, she's not going to get the autism label because these systems want to do whatever they want to do. And the thing is, these days, it's like, now psychiatrists and stuff are trying to act like they don't really have the authority to even give autism diagnosis, even though it's a quote-unquote mental illness. So now they're like acting like you have to find these autism clinics and go through these hoops. And it's really funny because a lot of people, they get these labels when they're in these abuse situations, but once they turn 18 and they can be, well, I mean, you still could be, but depending on your situation, or if you run away before you turn 18, you can't be, like, thrown in a conservatorship or taken advantage of anymore. So once you turn 18, none of that stuff is real. You have to, like, jump through hoops and go to different states running around trying to find autism clinics, and you have to fight to get re-verified to even have the label still on paper or put back on paper at 18. There's people with the label, they can't get housing, they can't get SSI, they can't get any services because these labels, once you can't be taken advantage of anymore, and once you're not being abused anymore, you're not in foster care anymore, none of these labels matter and you can't use them because these labels aren't for you, they're for your abusers, to make your abusers feel like, well, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, or for them to get a check, or for them to do a little pity party, as much as and type people commonly do, because they'll like to talk about how they're quote-unquote taking care of their autistic kid, and I'm taking care of my schizophrenic kid, I'm taking care of my bipolar kid, and I mean, I hope you're taking care of your kid. That's what you're supposed to do. But it's like when they get these labels put on their kids, or even when they just lie, because some people, they don't even have the label put on their kid. Like, there was a situation with this boy, and he didn't even have the bipolar label. He hadn't even been taken through the Cash for Kids system. His mom had the bipolar label, and she was giving him her meds that were prescribed to her, and he didn't even have the label, which, of course, I mean, if she wanted to, all she would have to do is take him to a doctor and say he's bipolar, and they'll write it up on a piece of paper, get their paycheck for it, and give him the drugs. But she didn't even want to use her energy to do that. She just was forcing him to take her meds. And that was a messed up situation. He was like 14 if I remember him right. Hopefully he's okay, because that was a long time ago and I don't know what happened to him. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, they use the label to like brainwash you into actually developing the symptoms, but none of that stuff matters after a certain point. Like, your abusers can get SSI your whole life, or in my situation specifically, because I'm speaking about different situations I've witnessed of people I actually know in person and stories I've heard. But in my specific situation, I think, I don't even know, because I moved back and forth a lot. So there were times where my mom was getting SSI, but I wasn't living with her, but she was getting it for me. I don't even know what label is for, so I can't say all that. Because like I said, I got labeled everything in the DSM. Some of it was word of mouth. I don't really know what was actually put on paper and what wasn't. So the SSI could have been for who knows what. It could have been for the autism. It could have been for something else. It could have been for OCD. I have no clue. But it could have been for, I don't know what I was about to say. It's just so many. So there was that whole situation. She started getting it maybe when I was 12, because that's really when the caster kid system stuff started. And she got it for all those years, but like, I can't get it because a couple reasons. For one, I don't actually have a valid and verified mental illness, which is so funny. And I remember I was telling somebody this who like knew about my situation when I was doing the evidence videos and all that, and they said they didn't really know what to say. But yeah, so like, I was told about how I don't actually have a valid and verified mental illness, so there's that. What was the other thing? Another thing is that my mom told them whatever, because I didn't actually want to get the money, but my old counselor, therapist, type thing, whatever she was, she told me that I should try to get it, because she was like, well, I mean, you went through all of that, so you might as well just try to get the money. And then she said some bull crap, and she was like, well, with all the physical health issues that you got from the drugs and all the different things that happened, you could probably still get SSI for that, even if you can't for the mental labels. But the thing is, I don't actually have any mental or physical label put on paper. So there's that. And the physical thing, I don't really see that happening, to be honest. It would be really hard to get put on paper, even with the blood work of like the blood sugar issues and stuff. But yeah, so that counselor told me to, a couple other people told me to, so I went to the SSI office, and where I was living at the time, it would have been a little bit more money, way more than what my mom was getting. My mom was only getting $500 a month where we lived. Well, no. For the first couple of years in North Carolina, she only got $500 a month from the SSI, which all of that went towards the bills, because we lived in the hood, and so it was income based. And I remember this one girl was making fun of me. She was like, so your whole family is living off a $500 disability check from you. And I was like, well, I mean, when you put it like that, actually, no, I think somebody I'm about to go way off somewhere else that's going to be kind of irrelevant, but somebody told me that the reason that I don't feel upset about my current situation is because I grew up poor and I'm used to living on nothing. But honestly, remembering that whole insult from that girl about, I mean, she was right, but remember that whole remark from that girl about my whole family living on $500 a month, it's like, well, honestly, I guess I could get what the person meant. But, and it's actually kind of funny, because at one point, I think during like not the part 3 channel, but maybe like the part 4 channel, no, I think it was the part 3 and then the part 5, there was 11 people living in the house, and it was my sister's house though, so of course she made sure that she had her job and stuff, because she wanted to keep her house, but like nobody else was helping. And then like the only other money was money that was stolen from me that I made from like taking out people's trash, different things like that. And then of course the SSI. And I remember there was this one point where I tried to get a job and my mom didn't want me to. I had to beg to get an ID. That was a whole bunch of games for months. And then she didn't want me to get a job, and eventually she admitted that she didn't want me to get a job because if I started working and I was working too long and the government, well, not the government, but like whatever the people are called that are over that with the Social Security stuff, if they saw the money that was coming in, they would turn off the SSI. And so then she made me she stopped letting me go to work. But anyway, that's a long story of mess. But my point with that is that once you turn 18, you don't get any of that stuff. All of a sudden now nothing's valid, nothing's verified, and I'm being told I don't actually have a valid or verified mental illness. And at the end of the day, like I said, I didn't even want the money. I was just told to try to get the money anyway. And then I was told different bullcrap about how I would have to prove that I was fit to get the money as far as that. But then I was also told by someone else about how I don't actually have a valid or verified mental illness. And it's like, but yeah, because my mom had called them and told them whatever on my 18th birthday to make sure that I couldn't get the money. And I don't even know what all she told them. They actually did something similar to my brother who had the bad black boy with ADHD label. He had SSI for a little while once he turned 18, which is honestly good for him because all of my siblings, my older siblings, they were all kicked out at 13 and 14 and a whole bunch of other stuff with that. And so once he turned 18, he was able to get SSI, but he was staying with my mom's mom at one point in time for a little while, and then she got mad at him for whatever in the world and got his SSI turned off. And it's a lot of stuff with that. And the thing is, once that gets turned off, it's really impossible to get that type of stuff back. And I really didn't want it, but since I kept getting told to try to get it, I just went anyway. And I remember this one staff member at the shelter who said that she would give me a ride there. She was like, it's honestly messed up because the people who are on drugs, they're able to get SSI for the health issues that they get from being on drugs. In fact, they even are able to get SSI for having a substance use disorder. So they're able to get money for doing drugs. And she said that they spend all of the money on drugs. Like the same week he gets the money, he gets a whole bunch of whatever he does. But I am going to try to get back to the point though, because I feel like I did my usual. I was talking about something and then I went to something else, and I don't even think I ever finished my original sentence with that girl who would bang her head on concrete. She also would get really upset because of certain noises, and also she made a lot of weird noises as well. She would just be making noises, and I remember she was on some stuff because her parents were, and then of course the Cash for Kids system conditions you to do drugs because they give you drugs. The same drugs that homeless people are addicted to are the same drugs that they're forced on in childhood. But not only that, they're the same meds that people say homeless people need to take, which I mentioned before. People say that homeless people are just mentally ill, need to take their meds, but the meds are the same drugs they're getting high on. It's their prescription drugs. So yeah, anywho, she was on stuff, and so I would think that maybe she was just high or whatever. But then, honestly, most of the time she wasn't. She just made a lot of noise. And it even made me think back, recently thinking about this, it's made me think back to this whole situation way back when, during the whole transgender boom thing. Well, not transgender boom thing. I mean, it's always been a thing. It's a ritual it's honestly an ancient ritual. They did it in Egypt. They did it in ancient Greece and Rome and all that. But more so when it started to happen more for, at least due to being pushed in the media and schools anyway, if this is coming out right. I was in this one group home type placement, this residential thing. I don't remember much about it because pretty much my whole life is mostly repressed memories since running away, and then I don't remember too much of anything from when I was on drugs. So the little bit I do remember is a situation while being locked up, and there was this one girl who went by Loki. And I don't know what her real name was. I wouldn't say it anyway. But she went by Loki. And some sirens had came on because the boys would get into fights all the time. Because, of course, that's what traumatized kids do. They know that people hate them. They've been locked up for years of their life for no reason. And they would get into fights pretty often. And when that happened, the sirens would go off, and it was like a code blue, code white. I keep zoning out, but to get to the point, when the sirens would go off, she would start crying and rocking back and forth, and she was crying kind of loudly, and the staff just said that she was faking it. But honestly, knowing what I know now, when it comes to the autism label, that was honestly probably autism. And that's one of the funny things about the Cash for Kids system. They'll tell you that you're faking it, or that you're just faking being mentally ill for attention because you want to be locked up and drugged. But the thing is, they know that the only reason that these systems exist is so they can torture and sexually abuse people and make black statistics and use you as a government experiment. Really what they want to do, they want to turn you into like a Delta assassin or something. They create serial killers. Society creates its own issues on purpose and then plays victim in them. Because it's all pride, really. Society creates its issues. They act that they don't know what's going on. Just like with the whole quote-unquote homeless crisis thing, which is honestly so much bullcrap with that. And if you look back at the documentaries from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, you'll know that the whole issue of homeless kids has been an issue. It's an issue everywhere, really. Like the same people that are out here now that are either out of their mind or they're on drugs and they're 60, 70, they've been out here since they were 12, 13, 7, 10 years old. And then a lot of them went into the military to try to fix their situation once they turned 18, and that screwed them up even more. And then, of course, in the military, they force you on drugs there too. Like, if they'll give you Adderall when you have to do certain things, or if they want you to stay up all night, they'll give you Adderall, they'll give you ketamine. They try to make it about, I can't even think of what word to call it, or call him, to not get this video flagged, but the Adolf dude, if I can even say that. They calmly tell you about Adolf and how he was on drugs, or they'll tell you about Aleister Crowley and how he did drugs to do certain things, but that's a thing that, honestly, a lot of the things that the Z's did, as I call them, they learned from the U.S., and I mean, it's the same people. It's the same group of Europeans taking out their own people, supposedly, because that situation didn't even go how they claim it did whatsoever. But I'm getting way off into something else. But anyway, Adolf's army would do drugs, and he would give them cocaine and stuff to do certain things that he wanted them to do so they wouldn't feel bad about it. But they do that here too. I can't think of a military that doesn't do that, to be honest. And like I said in another video, if you were out here and you knew how many homeless people are veterans, you wouldn't even want to go into the military. And then they tell you stories about how, like, they would have to go to these different Native American and other places, and they'd take up the Aboriginals in a helicopter and fly them around and show them their weapons. And while they were distracting them, they would be dropping bombs on their land, and then they drop the people back off in the bombed land, and they would get paid for that. And they don't get paid a lot, because something I noticed about the military is that they say that while they were in it, they were broke, and that even while getting out of it, they're really broke. I even met this dude in Slab City, this weird predatory dude, who was telling me about how he was hopefully going to get some payback and get some money because he got COPD in the military due to different chemicals and stuff. And out of all the ones I met, he's the only one that's talked about getting something out of it. Other than the Guadalajara meth addict, which if you watch the animation I made about, it's supposed to be like about the Cash for Kids system, but it's obviously something I more so thought of myself. But I know something that goes on, especially with like these high level gangs. But anyway, the Guadalajara meth addict, that's what I call him anyway. He's somebody that was homeless since 7. His mom was a Jezebelic feminist She hated men, so she hated him. She would kick him out. He would have to prostitute at 7 to feed himself. And he would obviously get thrown in jail a lot for being homeless and for not being allowed to go home as a kid. And he went to the military at 18. He actually got something out of it, though. I mean, the U.S. dollar's about to fall, so the people who are running off to different countries living off the U.S. dollar, that's not going to work for too much longer, but he was able to get a house in Mexico, at least. Because with all the stuff that he went through, and of course he ended up becoming a narcissist in the end, he was very at risk of being right back out here. So him and that dude I mentioned before from Slab City, they're the only people I've ever heard talk about actually getting something out of the military. Most just end up losing their mind even more when they've already been through enough bull crap, and it doesn't work out for them in the end. And they have to do so much messed up crap that they end up feeling guilty about. Like, I remember this one dude I met in Cali. He was one of the homeless people that are really common to run into, the ones that dress as wizards. And he was in the military. He's about 70, and he became a comedian. And of course he has PTSD because he feels so guilty about all the people he had to hurt for no reason. He became a comedian just to make people laugh, and he walks around telling people jokes, and he's an author and some other stuff now. So yeah, and then he was trying to raise money to take veterans on trips or something like that. I don't remember his name though. So, trying to get back to the point again for I don't know the how manyth time. Once you turn 18, getting the autism label put back on paper is impossible. There's even people that were diagnosed with autism at birth, but they can't get access to their medical records, and that's not a label that you can really get put on yourself at 18. Honestly, it doesn't even matter what label you try to get. There are places that'll refuse to give you an evaluation, especially if you're homeless, because they'll feel like you're just trying to cheat the system so you can get housing out of it. And it's just so much stuff with that. But yes, it's just funny because after the whole situation, me and others have been told about how we don't have verified or valid mental labels, and it's just kind of funny. Not that I even want one, because I don't want to identify with any of that stuff. I don't really want to fall into the victim complex that goes along with it. But it's due to the stuff that happened, and also the health issues I got for it, because getting a physical label or diagnosis is even harder, and it could possibly help with something to help me out in the meantime while working on the health issues and stuff, but it's still kind of whatever. Because of course, once you're not being abused anymore, people don't even care about the trauma symptoms. All of a sudden, you're not the quote-unquote narcissist in the family system anymore. You're not the quote-unquote sociopath or psychopath. You're not the ADD, ODD, autistic, any of that. Once you're not being taken advantage of anymore, none of these labels are real. You could have autism when you're being abused, but once you're 18, you don't have autism anymore. Or you never had autism, and now all of a sudden, the doctors will be like, well, in your medical records, it says that they didn't agree with any of this. So why are you trying to lie to people? And it's well, I mean, they got a paycheck then. And that's the funny thing about the Cash for Kids system. Your abusers get a check, everybody around you get a check, everybody's paycheck and cash cow, and you don't get any money out of it, even in the end of the situation. And it's funny because you get told that you're bad, crazy, and slow and retarded, and you get told, well, we just care so much about you that we want to lock you up to keep you safe, and we want to quote-unquote treat you, and you need treatment. But then once they can't use you anymore, you get thrown out onto the streets or whatever, and you don't get anything out of it. And it's well, what happened to all the treatment I needed so bad and me being retarded and stuff? In fact, some lady told me to talk to this lady she knew who was helping her son before he got unalived, which there's so much I could say about that situation. And she did kind of seem kind of let me help you lunatic-y, because she was doing the common thing of trying to push me towards services that don't really exist. And I kept telling her I wasn't homeless, but like I said in the last video, people really don't, they don't listen. They if you look a certain way or you like have a certain energy you give off, people already have their ideas about you, so it's whatever. But yeah, anywho, I went to talk to the lady that she told me to talk to because she claimed that like she could help me get a job or something. And none of the stuff that she said was honestly really even true, to be honest. And the lady, she said that she works with people who had IEPs, which there's so much I can say about that, who have mental labels, who are like developmentally delayed, some stuff like that. And so I found out to really be considered quote-unquote retarded, of course she didn't use that term, but to really be quote-unquote retarded, you have to have an IQ lower than 75, which that just shows like how much the IQ has dropped over the years. But I don't know anybody that's considered special or so retarded that has a low IQ, to be honest. They usually have above average IQs. So that's really funny, but yeah, so there's that. This is kind of too long, and I kind of was all over the place, but this is my part 2. And in the part 3, I'm going to hopefully actually go in to different things with my relatives and the autism label and the BPD and personality disorder side.